Hello and welcome to this video from the Fertility Alliance. Today we're joined by Mel, and Mel is going to talk about her experience of going through treatment without a partner. Mel, I wonder if you just wanted to start by introducing yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So my name's Mel Johnson. I am 45 and I have a 6-year-old daughter, Daisy, who I conceived using a sperm donor and IVF after a long, hard consideration about whether solo parenthood was the right path for me. And then subsequently started supporting other women who were considering this route to parenthood.
Can you tell us a bit about what led you to that place?
Yeah, so basically, I split up with a long-term partner when I was 29, which is a complicated age to find yourself single when I had assumed that I was getting married and having children with my, partner of 7 years. And so I really gave it a good effort to try to meet somebody else. I really put a lot of energy into trying to meet somebody, but for whatever reason, I just couldn't find the right partner, anybody that I connected with. And what I found is the older I was getting, the more, towards my mid to late 30s, it was becoming, the pressure was making dating even more difficult. And it started to get to the point where I was thinking, am I looking for a partner? Or am I actually looking for somebody to have a child with? Those are two different things, really. And you go on a first date and you think, will you be a suitable partner for me to have a child with? It's not the most relaxing date. And as much as you try to not be stressed about it, we have got a biological clock, and as time is ticking, I just was really worried that I was going to miss out on parenthood. And I didn't know anybody who was in the same situation as me. All my single friends, one by one, met somebody and were, if they wanted to, deciding to start trying for children. And I just felt like I was just in this situation on my own where I just couldn't meet the right person. And it really made me worry that I was going to miss out on parenthood. And that's what helped me make the final decision that I was going to pursue solo parenthood, the fear of missing out on parenthood altogether if I didn't do that.
And how difficult was it to actually make that decision?
It was really difficult. So I had a deeply embedded idea of how I thought my life would be. I've done a lot of research on it. It's very interesting. I was just looking at, the first books my mum read to me was Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty and the Prince Comes and Saves You. Moving on to even like the Roald Dahl book, SEO Trot ends in, and they got married and lived happily ever after. Then I branched out of my reading when I was a bit older and read some of the classics, and they all end in, so just over and over. I'm an avid reader, and every book that I was reading, even books that weren't romance novels, so often ended in happily ever after, being meeting a partner, getting married and having a family together. Same as films, same as the way the media writes about single people. And so I didn't realize at the time, but it was so deeply entrenched in me that that was the route that I would take. I didn't even question it. And that was the route that would lead to happiness. It was how, it was just deeply embedded to me that that's the route I could take. So trying to think, actually, I don't think that is going to happen to me. And can an alternative be as good? And at that time, I didn't know anybody else who'd followed this path. And so I had no evidence of whether an alternative would be as good. I worried, what would the impact for my child be? Would I be able to cope? Like what? So it was really difficult. But for me, because I really knew I wanted to be a parent more than I wanted a relationship, in the end, when time was of the essence, I thought, I'm going to make this decision and I'm going to make it work for me. I'll figure it out.
What were the things you were most worried about?
So at that time, I didn't have any information, I didn't have any data, I didn't have any of the research. So I was worried about the impact of my, well, she's my daughter, but at that time, just a child. What would the impact of not having a father in their lives be? Um, And I was worried that I would be lonely and that it would just be a less good experience for me not having any help and not having anyone to do it with. I was also strangely worried about what other people would think. Sometimes you just can't help that, can you? I was just thinking, again, because I didn't know anyone who'd done this, and this was 8 years ago, so it was less common. I just thought, well, everyone just judge me for making this decision, and I've got to tell my work colleagues and my boss, what will they think? And I just thought, why can't I just do it the conventional way, so it doesn't have to be, I don't have to think about these things on top of it. And I think as a single woman, quite a lot of people in couples would have some of the same worries I have, but you almost have a blind belief in a partnership that you'll just be able to figure it out. And I think sometimes as a single woman, you have more worries and you think about those things a lot more before you make the decision. So some of them weren't only about being a solo parent. It was just, will I be a good parent? But I think without that reassurance of another person, sometimes you worry about it more. Um, I was in a very lucky position where I didn't have to worry about finances, but I know that is a massive worry for many people. Luckily for me, that was one at least that I didn't have to worry about. And just, would I have enough help? Would I have enough people in my support network to help me? They were the main things.
It's interesting. You talked earlier about the worrying about the response of friends and family. And I wonder, when you first started broaching it with people, what did they say?
I mean, everybody just knew how much I wanted to be a parent, and they were just pretty much without exception hugely supportive. I think my mum is my main support, and I honestly don't think she would have cared how I got pregnant. She was just like, brilliant. So yeah, friends and family hugely supportive. I had one friend who didn't agree with the decision, and sadly that impacted our friendship. But I think that is quite rare. I think that for the vast majority of people, we worry about it. Like the amount of worry about what my colleagues would think when they were wholeheartedly delighted for me and supportive. There's a lot of energy goes into worry that so often doesn't transpire. And I think that there's quite a lot of people worry about what grandparents will think. And sadly, my gran wasn't around to see me become a parent, but I'm also sure she would have been hugely supportive. So at the end of the day, most people's they've got your best interest at heart. So I think as long as they think it's the right decision for you, they'll be behind you. And that was certainly my experience with it.
And how did you go about finding a clinic and a donor? I wonder if you could talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I at the time I actually lived abroad, so I was living in Budapest, and so but my sort of base in the UK was in Manchester. So I just rang. I used Manchester Fertility. I rang them and said, this is what I'm thinking. I don't really know anything about it. Is it possible? Can I chat to someone? And they said, yeah, just come down and chat to us. And the appointment was really quick, like it was a couple of weeks later. And I just got a really good, for me, I got a really good feel from them. So the person I spoke to was just so kind and warm, and that's kind of what I needed through the process. Quite reassuring. And I had a consultation with them. They explained the options, they explained the process, and then they said, you could start on your next cycle if you want. And it's so funny because you go from honestly years of thinking, is this the right thing to do? Shall I do it? To making a phone call, and then within, a couple of weeks, them saying you could start trying. And I just thought, actually, I've thought about this for so many years. Why not? Why not just start? So there's different ways to find a sperm donor, but with the clinic that I used, they have a sperm bank attached to the clinic. And so they have a process where you say what you're looking for in a sperm donor, and they offer you two choices. And some people are like, two choices, that's not enough. Because if you go to some of the big sperm banks, you can have like a spreadsheet full of, ranking and rating of different people. Um, and I think it's what your personal preference is. I had a lot less information. I had physical characteristics, and then I had a letter, and it was really the letter that helped me make the decision, because I liked what was in the letter. And there was two letters. One was for me to explain why the person had donated, and one was for my daughter, with just a slightly different twist on why they donated, written more for a child. And but other people have voice notes and photographs and all of this information. So it really just depends on whether you're the sort of person who needs that all of that information. I personally actually found it quite nice not to have to be overwhelmed by all the choice. And ultimately, both of the ones that I had met the criteria that I had described. And so sometimes just psychologically you feel like you need more choice. But I thought, why do I? And so I chose on, some physical characteristics, but then also the final decision really was in the letter. And one of the things that the donor had said in the letter is that he was open to meeting, any child born from his donation. And that was really important for me, because there's no guarantee, but at least at the time of donating, that was his intention, which sort of swung it for me a little bit.
And what about the process? What was that like?
So again, for me, I chose to go straight to IVF. So you can do IUI, which is much less intrusive. But because I lived abroad, and by this time I was 37, going to be 38, I thought I want to just choose IVF, which gave me the best chance of success in the quickest time. So I suppose the hardest part of it was the egg collection and giving yourself the injections. It's something that I've never done before, and it's a little bit nerve-wracking. But then once you start, I think it's just something that's it just becomes so familiar to you. And then the actual egg collection itself, I was out, so you don't know what's happening anyway, and just a little bit sore the next day. But I continued working. I had one day off work. I continued working through it, so it was a bit uncomfortable, a bit sore, but it wasn't, it was okay as a process. And then I overstimulated, which is quite common. So then they say that you can't do the transfer straight away, which is quite, you've got into your mindset that you're going to have a transfer, and then you have to wait another month. So that was a bit frustrating. But we have to listen to the medical professionals on what they say the best thing to do is. So I then came back the following month for my first transfer. That sadly was a chemical pregnancy, so I can't resist to test early. So I tested early, and it was a faint line, but then the line got less and less, and you wouldn't have even known if you hadn't been doing fertility treatment. You just wouldn't have even known or tested. But that was disappointing. And then a few months later, I had the second embryo transfer, because I had created 3 embryos, and that embryo is now my daughter.
What a wonderful story. How was it going through those repeated cycles? Did that get a bit difficult for you, or was it okay?
Yeah, it's the psychological part of it. So it's the hope and the expectation, and then thinking, oh gosh, I had 3 embryos, the first one didn't work, and then thinking, oh gosh, if the second one doesn't work, I've only got one left. So it's very much the emotional side of it for me. um uh, and so it was hard, but also what's slightly different, I think, as a single woman going through the treatment, is that it sort of is quite empowering, as you've got an option, and it gives you hope, and it's enabling you to take a step forward. So there's something quite positive about it as well. Although, and I have to say, my path was relatively straightforward, because I only had to have one egg collection and then to embryo transfers. Some people think that the hardest decision is deciding to become a solo parent, and then really only realize that the journey starts there, and have very difficult fertility journeys. And it almost doesn't seem fair sometimes as a solo parent, and I'm sure like lots of people feel throughout this process things aren't fair, but it's like I'm doing this on my own. Don't now also present me with medical fertility problems that I need to deal with. So I was lucky in that mine was quite straightforward, but I know for many, the decision is the very beginning of the journey, and then the treatment can be really tough.
And how have things been since then for you? I mean, have you found any things that you think were more difficult than you expected?
I think there's some things that were more difficult, and there's some things that are much easier. So I mean, my daughter's 6, so I've got so used to doing it on my own. I genuinely cannot imagine doing it with anyone else. And actually, in hindsight, think I might be quite bad at doing it with someone else. Do you know what I mean? Because I've got so used to doing it myself, I quite like having all the decisions, deciding what to do with my time. I like going to bed at like 9 o'clock, 9:30, and I don't have to, stay up later or be social. And I like deciding what we're going to do. I chose my daughter's name. I like having the decision of everything. And I've got very used to parenting on my own. And I have a lot of support as well. So I've got support of family and friends. I think probably something, I mean, I don't think anyone is necessarily prepared for the sleep deprivation. So, when my daughter was very young, just being fully responsible and not being able to have a break when you're very sleep deprived. But again, I had a lot of support, so I did get a break. Um, be Sometimes that bedtime routine can be quite relentless, every day the same, and at the same time, it's what people dream of. So it sometimes feels very difficult to complain about it. So sometimes it's the relentlessness of it being fully on you when things are hard. And the way that I've got around that is my support network. So really getting a great group of people around me who can give me some support and can let me have a little bit of time to myself, etc. And the benefit is, this having this amazing group of people. I feel like I've got more support than plenty of other people who are in a partnership, because I've got all of these people around me. And one of the amazing things is the community of other solo mums that I've met. And my daughter is growing up with these other children who are in the same family situation. And they're really, as she grows up, I feel like she'll have friends that she recognizes their family structure, and they can ask each other, how they're dealing with it and talk about their feelings towards it. So not only do I have support from other solo parents, but my daughter has made friends with the children as well. And I think that's a really nice thing.
If there's someone listening to this who is thinking of doing what you've done, what would your top tips be? Were there things that you wish you'd known at the start?
Connect with other people who are, well, I would say who are both considering this and who have already done it. So you've got some people to look at and to ask for how their experience was, and what they've already done. But also you've got some people who are in exactly the same position as you at the same time, because I think it's so reassuring when you meet people and you're like, yes, that's exactly how I feel. That's exactly the position I'm in. So trying to get connected with people who are doing the same thing at the same time. And then just really do the research. So there's so much information out there, and probably can be overwhelming because there's so much. But I always recommend people read the book We Are Family by Susan Gollenbach. That's like got a lot of the research in it. You can listen to podcasts from, I've interviewed loads of donor conceived people who grew up in solo parent families, and so they've got the lived experience of what our children will experience, and listening to them and learning from them, and just getting as much information as you can to feel really confident about going into this process. but also knowing you don't have to have everything figured out. Like, it's so rare for everybody to be like, right, I'm 100% ready. I've got everything in order. You can still work through things as you go. And that's the beauty of if you found a good network of people around you, because you can chat to them about it as well.
And funny, I just wanted to ask you a bit about the Stalk and I, because you've actually set up something yourself to support other women, haven't you?
Yeah, so basically, when I was doing it, like I said, I didn't know a single other person in this situation, and so I set up the Stork and I originally for myself to meet other people, but now I've just realised the power of connecting people who are on this journey. So one of the things that I do is run different group coaching courses, one for people considering solo parenthood, another for people who are pregnant as a solo parent, and then the last for people who want confidence in talking to their child about being a solo parent. And the power of dialing in and meeting people in a really similar situation to you, who've got the same questions, the same thoughts, the same worries, and getting that support network of people that you can chat to about it, is so powerful. And then, as I said, I've got a podcast where you can listen to a whole range of different people's stories who've done this, and all sorts of, there isn't one way to become a solo parent. There's lots of different nuances to it. So I've tried to capture as many different sort of variations of the story. So hopefully, as people listen, they can relate to certain people that they hear. And then if people have got specific things that they want to work through, I work with people on a one-to-one coaching basis as well. So yeah, really, really the key for me is this sense of community, and the sense of meeting other people in the same situation and learning and supporting each other.
Mel, thank you so much for speaking to us today. This was a video from the Fertility Alliance, and you can find our website at www.fertilityalliance.org.uk for lots more information. Follow us on YouTube for other videos too. So thank you very much, Mel.